The year is 32 post-Draconis. A generation has passed since the conclusion of the Draconic Wars. Humanity has won. The dragons are extinct. Millions have died. King Edward the Magnanimous is dead. Though humanity managed to kill the last of the dragons after 20 years of fighting, the cost in lives was massive. Not only were hundreds of thousands killed in battles against large dragon roosts, but millions more died to the diseases, famines, and civil disorder that beset the great empires of old as the war dragged on. For the first time in centuries, the global population decreased, and it did so in dramatic fashion. King Edward never lived to see the total extinction of the dragons. Instead, he died before the worst effects of the war hit Frostock. His successor, King Alfred the Unready, took the throne. Though he did manage to see Frostock through the successful conclusion of the war, he inherited an empire pushed to the brink. The home isles were decimated, and to rebuild, Alfred needed money, which was in short supply after the exorbitant spending on the war effort. As thousands flee to the colonies to escape the horrible conditions of the home isles, Alfred begins to levy more and more taxes upon the furthest reaches of the empire. As the colonies struggle to accommodate all of the new arrivals, they are saddled with supporting the motherland now as well. Tension is rising, and all it would take is a spark. Welcome, once again, to Auckton, as we begin to see the end of an era. Heyo, folks, welcome back to episode 10 of Auckton. Take 2, again. I am really getting frustrated with CapCut and Audacity and how the voices don't seem to link up anymore. Or the voices, Lord. My voice recordings don't seem to be linking up with the actual speed of the video for some reason. And it's really annoying because I do the voice recordings in 10-minute increments, actually. So there shouldn't be a 30% difference between the voice recording and the video. I don't know if it's my computer, I don't know if it's the software, but like it's driving me up the wall. But yeah, we are coming into this episode at the end of an era. I am I don't know if I'm going to call this season 1 per se, but I intend for this to be the end of, part 1 at the very least. Because after this episode, we will have a pretty substantial time skip. The last time skip I did was around, I want to say, episode 3, between the very early settlement of Auckton and the more, you know, familiar colonial era. Um, just a quick rehash, Auckton, excuse me, the continent of Tarath on which Auckton resides is part of the New World, which, is like much like our own New World. However, the New and Old Worlds are connected via a northern landmass. Essentially, imagine if the Arctic Ocean was land. So as a result, Auckton was discovered by the Old World much sooner than it would have been in our timeline. Uh, but yeah, so with this end of an era, I'm planning on maybe doing a recap episode next. Sort of just like a timeline on Auckton and how it's been developing over the last 10 episodes. I'm not sure about that. I've noticed that my lore-heavy videos don't do as well as, well, truth be told, the ones that focus on, like, the citadels and forts. Uh, but yeah, I'm not sure. I might, just for fun, because I do enjoy the world-building aspect of this. But, it does depend on what y'all want. Another thing I want to mention is we have a Discord now. So if you're interested, I highly, highly recommend joining the Discord because I tend to ask a lot about what I should do next in Auckton, and I like to get y'all's ideas. Eventually, my Patreon supporters will also, be able to vote on stuff as like a city council or what have you. So yeah, if you are into that sort of stuff, consider popping by. I figured I'd do that at the start of the episode instead of shouting everything out at the end, because a lot of people will miss that. Speaking of the end, I highly recommend y'all stay tuned until the end because some interesting stuff is going to be played in the cinematics that I think that y'all will want to pay attention to. Alrighty, so what am I doing? I've been blabbering on enough. During the war, Auckton wasn't able to expand a lot because, all of the shipping traffic was dedicated to the military and all of, like, Auckton's production was for the war effort. So other than, natural growth, there weren't many migrants coming in to Auckton. However, with the end of the war, maritime traffic has become civilian again, and with that, thousands of refugees are fleeing the home isles because it's war-torn and destitute. Tarath, I mentioned in one of the earlier episodes, had a low or non-existent dragon population simply because of how distant it was from the old world. Um, so because of that, Auckton never had to fight directly in the war, other than sending men overseas. So they're unscathed for the most part from the conflict. Whereas the old world with its dragon populations faces massive, turmoil and destruction from the results of the war. Famine, disease, all of that stuff that I mentioned in the intro has driven thousands and thousands of people to flee to the colonies, including Auckton. So that's why I'm building here a refugee camp. I do some basic detailing because the more details I do, the worse my frames get, and I do not have a good computer. I'm running all these graphics mods, and I throw my quality settings up really high for the cinematics. But every time I do a cinematic shot, I have to like increase the speed of the footage by like 4 or 5 times to make it look good for y'all. But yeah, I placed down all of these tents and the props and whatnot, but I wanted to fade it into the existing town. Like I said, there would be some natural development, simply from population, births and whatnot. Um, so I'm fading the tent city into the town by kind of including these uh, houses and whatnot interspersed in between them. Um, I figure that this was probably the grid here is built more as like a kind of private endeavor rather than municipal. And as a result, rather than following the grid system I established, which is based off of the Jeffersonian grid and English survey system in the colonies, um, I'm doing this kind of like off of the main highway that already existed. Basically, some dude, or development company decided that this would be a good place to, build some houses. That's why the roads are perfectly designed to fit these you know, um Trinity houses and Georgian row houses built by Donoteet of the Franklin series. If you've not watched it, I highly recommend it. I've said this before, but I do think it bears mentioning again. But yeah, so placing a whole bunch of these down, trying to figure out how I want this to work, and then deleting a lot of these buildings so I can fade the density out. But yeah, you saw me earlier too delete a bunch of walls around Southvale. I decided to get rid of the old Palisade wall because of the expansion. Southvale is no longer a legally distinct entity from Auckton. Instead, it's its own, or excuse me, it's just part of Auckton now as a neighborhood. So as a result, with, population increase, natural growth, I figure, some of these row houses and whatnot would probably take shape around Southvale regardless of the refugees. But yeah, just coming through here and doing some basic detailing. As always, I love my dirt decals. I forgot that I left the game pause for a minute. But yeah, the dirt decals make everything look better. I've ranted about them so many times, but it does really bring an area to life in my opinion when you get zoomed in. Unfortunately, it is not good for the frames. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I do not have a good computer whatsoever. Um, like I run a rip roaring um, i7 7300. No, that's too high. It's lower than that. And a astounding 16 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM. Yeah, I'd love to buy a new machine, but I am a broke college student, so maybe one day. But unfortunately, for now, when I jack up the graphics for cinematics and whatnot, uh, let's just say I have when I edit this stuff, I have to speed up the raw footage by about 4 times in order to make it bearable for y'all. But yeah, right now I am working on modernizing Southvale a little bit, trying to incorporate it a little more into modernity. There was a bunch of thatch roofed houses and stuff like that, and even still, it is pretty distinct from the rest of everything. So, what am I doing here? A couple episodes ago, I believe it was the episode when I did the governor's mansion, I used this house as just straight up. I just placed the building. And I really do like this building. So I decided to play around with procedural objects. I've been playing with it a lot. Um, and I decided to see if I could make some sort of large manor house. Uh, I call this, I believe, the LaSalle estate. Um, so, I don't know what my point was there, but it is it's called the LaSalle Estate, and it is a fully procedural objects building. Unfortunately, I do not have the skills to make this, super highly detailed and stuff like that. But what I do is I redo the front entrance of the building because I believe the main door is actually in the back. So I just kind of I take the main door and I put it in the front just to make it look a bit better. And then I take one of these walls and strip it from the rest of the building, and use a pair of these to sort of make a new wing. And then I copy everything again, scale it a little bit to fit, and match up where the roofs should go with you know this house. This took me a little bit to do. I am not at all proficient in procedural objects, but this definitely was one of the most fun times I've had with PO. And I'm definitely growing to like the mod more and more. This is actually the first project I've ever had, even off camera, where I've done stuff with PO. I guess I did it off camera, but I did some like detailing work and whatnot in the refugee camp. I took some of those like big frigates that sit in Auckton Bay, uh, and like crashed them into the beach. You'll see those in the cinematics. Um, but yeah, no, I'm just doing some basic hedge work. I use these big mossy live oaks to kind of signify that this house has been here for a long time. Live oaks, as somebody from Louisiana, live oaks are definitely a status symbol. And the older they are, the more, I suppose, like generational wealth it shows that you have. Just some final detailing I do here. Using these cobblestone decals to kind of make the front look a little more impressive. Trying to see if I can fade them into the ground a little bit. That way I can use my favorite dirt decal and overlay that with the transparency, but I wasn't able to. So, these are pristine cobblestones. We'll just say that this family is very wealthy and hires a person to sweep the cobblestones. But yeah, and for the final project of the episode, do you all remember Georgetown? I bet you don't, because it was one of the like itty bitty satellite settlements that I did. I want to say in episode 2. Maybe episode 3. It was after I built South Vale and New Lockport. But basically, I did this one and then another tiny settlement called Riverveld, which is right across the river actually from Georgetown. But I kind of forgot about it, as I was focusing on the city of Auckton and the forts and all of that good stuff. Uh, it just kind of got left behind. So I decided to come in here and modernize it. This isn't like, a new development or anything. Fort Georgetown, you just saw it, would be relatively new. But, no, I imagine Georgetown has grown, over the decades and, well, truthfully, even centuries, because I believe it was built before the first time skip. Um, but yeah, Georgetown has been here for a hot minute, and I figured that it was worth expanding it out a little bit. I don't go into too much detail here, just doing some like normal row houses and whatnot. I build that town square, or supposed town circle, which is unique among the towns in Auckton, since it's a circle and not a square. But yeah, for the most part, it's just a normal little town. Because of its proximity to Auckton, it will probably eventually be incorporated, but for now, it is its own thing, doing its own little town things. It does, for the most part, use the grid system that or the survey grid system that I established. Um, but I subdivide the grids even smaller than I did in Yorkford when I did that last episode. But yeah, nothing too special to say here. I am quite proud of how the core of the town looks, but the outskirts, like normal, is just a bunch of these Trinity homes, and now I'm incorporating these British Victorian houses. They aren't very detailed in terms of props and whatnot. They're simple brick buildings, and I actually really like that because even though they are called Victorian, I do think they are somewhat timeless. It does look like they could have existed in this time period, which is equivalent to the late 1600s to possibly the early 1700s. But yeah, just trying to I didn't think it looked right for the town to just, end at the riverfront, but the terrain in this area gets very steep. I've mentioned this before, but around shorelines and the riversides, the banks are very, very steep and a little difficult to work with, but I do enjoy that challenge. I think it's fun to have to figure out how to deal with. So yeah, as we finish off this episode, doing my normal detailing things, placing dirt around. I want to thank you for watching this far. I really appreciate you spending your day with me as I do, my fun little city skyline stuff. I have a Patreon where you can get early access to some behind the scenes content. I will admit I don't post there very much, but in my defense, I don't have a Patreon, or I don't have any patrons right now, so I don't really have a need to post there. But yeah, I have that has early access. Um, you get a bunch of different perks on Patreon. I also have a Discord. Highly recommend you join there if you want to be involved in the development of Auckton. But yeah, I would really appreciate if you liked and subscribed and did all the YouTube things. It does mean a lot to me, and it does help the channel a lot. And if you don't, do leave a comment for where you want to see the series go next. If you would like a video on the timeline of Auckton and a recap video and all that stuff. But yeah, I've rambled on for enough about self-promotion. I hope you enjoyed yourself and have a good one. Tell me, friends, what is Auckton? An island? A mere city? A district within the colony of Cardiffil? What if Auckton was something more? The king would have us believe he works in our best interests, that he only wants the best for us. The way I see it, the monarchy destroyed their own territory, their own cities, their own people, and now they expect us to pay for it. These ash taxes take our money, our hard-earned resources, and ferry it across the ocean to serve faceless men we will never see and who will never work to our benefit. Tell me, brothers and sisters, is this what we came here for? To bend the knee to masters unseen? No, we were promised freedom in this new world. Many families have been here for centuries. Our loyalty must be to ourselves and to our home, not to some group of islands thousands of miles away. Let us be heard, for our time is soon.